Of all three of them. And today she once again would have been introducing these gentlemen. So in honor of Jane, they're here again today. I have some personal connections with these gentlemen myself, but I bet you if I went around the room and asked each and every one of you, you would tell me some connection that you have with these people. So we all have personal connections with them. I'm not going to highlight the fact that they all went to Jamestown High School. They're all local ambassadors. They all serve on numerous boards. They have all done amazing charitable work for us here. But they are intertwined with many, many things, particularly the radio. And now I will let you know, by talking to them, something of the times of their lives. Please come forward and let us share with you some of your stories, guys.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to the Marvin House today. To my left is Russ Diethrick. To my right is Jim Roselle. I'm Dennis Webster. Behind the camera is Greg Peterson, well known in the community for his work with the Robert H. Jackson Center, the Jamestown Jammers, many other organizations and groups. It's an honor to be here and to be recorded by Greg as we make this presentation. I've been a radio broadcaster all my life and I'm still learning things about it. And one of the things that I'm focused on these days is delivering the moment. That may be a term you're not familiar with if you're not in the industry, but it was spoken of often this past summer with the passing of Van Miller, whose voice and name I'm sure you recognize, called play-by-play for many years for the Buffalo Bills. And Van Miller was renowned for delivering the moment, for being able to, in the midst of a football game, when the pressure was really on, to stay with the game and be able to communicate with the audience all that was happening, despite the emotion and the turmoil around him. Now, I have, honest confessional, never been particularly good at delivering the moment. Many of you may know Helga Hulse. She was a piano teacher in Jamestown for many years, an extraordinary lady. And Helga once gave one of our daughters a piece of advice saying, don't focus on the fact that you're the person doing it, just focus on what you have to do, or turn that around. Stay focused on the work you have to do, not the fact that you're the person doing it. That's always been very challenging for me, so at this late point in my career, I'm still working on it. But I want to deliver the moment, because we are here, the three of us. Many of you are here because of Jane, and we miss her a great deal. We are all very fond of her. We have found a great loss in our lives in her absence, so we are here in part to celebrate and to remember fondly Jane Winter today, and to work hard, all of us, to fill the gaps that she left in our lives. So Jane, we will deliver the moment. And my job, sitting between the two of these men, is identical to what it is on Tuesday mornings at 20 minutes before 9 o'clock on WJTN, 1240 AM, when the R&D department is here and fully assembled, Jim Roselle and Russ Diethrick, from the times of your life. When we come together, there are three of us who have lived in Jamestown a long time, all had a variety of similar as well as different experiences, and we never really script what's going to happen there. It just sort of unfolds from the moment. I will introduce Jim, I will introduce Russ. Russ generally takes the microphone first on that broadcast, and I'll let him do the same today.
Thank you very much, Dennis, and folks, thank you for allowing us to share this marvelous time with you, and I'll be blessed with that beautiful food and dessert and the fellowship around the table. I have that same kind of excitement and fellowship when I walk through the door of WJTN on Tuesday mornings and on Saturdays to be in the company of these two gentlemen and all of it going on at the radio station. 99% of my life was listening to the radio and playing with the dials. I never thought that I would be sitting in the studio being part of that activity, but what a wonderful adventure that's been. That's kind of been my life. Can't remember, but the very first thing that happened to me was a beautiful smile on the face of a beautiful lady. And I've loved smiles on ladies' beautiful faces ever since. and that was Mother. I stand on the shoulders of Jim and Dennis and stand on the shoulders of this community for people here who were previously and people who are here today. The first view I had, I think, of the world was sitting and standing on the shoulders of my father. And ever since that, I've been standing on the shoulders of others in the community. And I feel that way when I have the opportunity to go to this station to take my life, my career, my preparation for life in with Dennis and Jim and to share it with the community. And every time I leave there, get back in the automobile and come back to Jamestown, I leave there a better person and a more comforting person than I was when I walked in the front door. So it's very easy and it's very enjoyable to be part of that. Over the years, I've been being part of the activity and the life of this community. A lot of it hovering around the Marvin House with the Woman of the Year project. And what an opportunity that is to see the smiling faces of beautiful women, just like my mother's down that very first moment in my life. All of those exciting things have been able to happen to me. I am not a builder, I'm a recipient of builders. And have a chance, as I've said before, being born left-handed and loving baseball, that helped create what for me has been a haven. Because I learned early that in a baseball team, a left-hander can only do a few things on the baseball team other than carrying water and go chasing foul balls. But you need to get that right-hander, the other team members, to make out that roster so you have a winning championship. So I'm very glad that I was one of the left-handers that had to struggle and get surrounded by right-handers. And the other thing I often say, and I mean this sincerely, when he says, "I'm Jim Roselle," I say, boy, I wished I was. Because to be a Jim Roselle and to be a Dennis Webster, what a marvelous gift that would be. Yes.
I mentioned a moment or two ago how difficult being in the moment, delivering the moment can be for me. There's a great example that occurred just a couple of blocks away from here a couple of decades ago when it was still the Holiday Inn, and we were doing radiothons for the American Heart Association. And there was a guy from Johnstown, I think Pennsylvania, named Bob Cummers. And he had several times set the world jump rope record, where he would jump for 45 minutes an hour, then rest 15, and he'd done it for 24 hours, 26 hours, long time. So he was about to set a record in Jamestown doing this, and we could see it. We were on the air 24 hours all night long. We stayed with him, and he kept jumping, and then they'd take his blood pressure and give him fluids in the 15 minutes he had off, and he'd be back at it again. And the tears, he's breaking the record. The tears are running down my face. I mean, I could hardly stand it. It's so exciting. And the man sitting to my right is just calling it coolly, calmly. The man who always delivers the moment is Jim Roselle.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Russ. I get nervous when I see a microphone.
Because you won't give it up.
No, thank you for the invitation. Let me also endorse and echo the same sentiments these gentlemen have given you regarding Jane Winter. We looked, Russ and I, every time we did the Women of the Year, Jane would come to the studio and give it the most beautiful look it ever had. And when she left, it got dull again. She decorated it because it was near St. Patrick's Day, but she brought along unique quotables, notables. And I'm one who loves to look at sayings down the history of man that give us a lesson in such few words. They're so brilliant at capturing the feeling and the meaning of life and its history in a few words. Take, for example, I'm at the showboat in the press room, the dining room. Up on the wall are sayings, quotables. The one I looked at and stopped and paused because it had everything in it that is so truthful. And it said, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, there will be peace. How simple, and yet so truthful. But that's just part of the story of my love here I sit with two gentlemen, and when I speak of my career with my grandchildren, I try to tell them the thing you want to do most is pick out a career in which you want to give 110%. Because I didn't win the lotto, and I don't have any money to leave you, playing that sort of game, But anyway, I said, love what you do, because you're going to have to work for a living, and you're going to go to it every day. And I remember as a teenager and almost latter years in high school, the final year when some of the men, my boyhood buddies, had a job during the day and would get up and go to their work in the summertime. And we would come home at night from the boys club. And I'd hear them say, I can't give the language. God, I gotta go to that job tomorrow. And I thought, what an attitude. What an attitude. I go home in the evening, or I'm home, and I'm excited about coming to work in the morning. I literally am. I look forward to it. Why not? I work with Dennis Webster. A man who loves his radio, has kept up the tradition of our station, and you can't find a more authentic, genuine man than Russ Diethrick. This is his community, and I have the pleasure of their company. But you've also given me the pleasure of your company. And you've kept me employed now for 62 years. Amazing. This profession is not a secure profession. It's very insecure, basically. Because there are many reasons you could lose a job. One quickly is that, say, the station gets a new general manager, and he has an idea that he'd like a new format. I don't fit into that format. Out you go. It's that simple. It's that simple. But fortunately, it hasn't happened. And I don't suspect it will in the next few weeks or so.
I think you're good, Jim.
But I can't thank the community enough for giving me the access to all the activity you're all involved in. It's a pleasure to go and tell the community what they've got waiting for them. When you look at this weekend, Dennis and I will talk about all the activity that you have a choice of. It's plentiful. It's amazing. And a lot of it is done through volunteers and good causes. And you all support it. That's what is waiting for me. And of course I have to give credit. There's a saying I've used over the years. Never underestimate the value of a friendship. Never underestimated it. Because my high school class president was Charles Goodell. And you've heard this before. Charlie was our House of Representative congressman. He then became senator when Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. And Richard Nixon did not want him as his candidate. So he went into law practice that he had previously. And about 2 years after he left Washington, he was invited to Chautauqua to give a speech. And I read it in an advanced program that Charlie's going to give a talk. It's called The Abuse of Government Power. Immediately I said, I'm heading for Chautauqua and I'm going to ask permission to do a broadcast because I felt the community should hear their congressman again. How does Charlie feel not being selected to run again? Just answer that question and what he's doing with his life now. So I quickly drove up that afternoon asked permission. They asked me what facility do you have? I said, I don't need much room. I only weigh 127 pounds. That's what I really told them. I said, I'll take any little corner. And we did. We agreed on the patio in the refreshment pavilion. Just move the table into the corner and I'll sit there and we'll meet the guests. And so we did the show, and Charlie gave me 2 interviews that week. He stayed for the week. And believe it or not, folks, a young man, 15 or 16, was one of the boys working in the restaurant. And he'd come out each morning and he would clean my broadcast table. It picked up leaves during the night and leftover hamburgers and wrappers and all that sort of thing. And he would clean that off and sweep around my table and go and get me a cup of happiness. That's coffee. And he'd bring it to me. That young man, his name, Roger Goodell. Today, the commissioner of the National Football League. Never underestimate the value of a friendship, folks. And the first thing he did when he came to give a talk about 4 years ago, Charlie came right over to say hello and give me an opportunity to interview. And he came 2 years later, and he came back to me and brought 2 special guests that I could interview. Luke Russer, the son of Tim Russer, and Mike Slive, the commissioner of the Southwestern Football Conference, the best conference in football, all because of the friendship. What more can you ask? There isn't much more. So I go to work each day thinking I have an opportunity to, as I say with the song, wake the town and tell the people. That's it. I don't go there, I can't go to work with a thought of denigrating somebody or being mean in some way. I don't want to interview anybody in politics and ask them a gotcha question. I don't like that. I'll ask them what their principles are, what issues are important, and why they want to vote for it or want to pass it. But I try to keep it on a level of decency. Remember Joe Welch? Do you remember the hearing during the communist era? Do you remember that, Greg? Joe Welch?
Yeah.
He was looking at, who was it from Wisconsin?
Senator McCarthy.
Joe McCarthy. Remember Joe McCarthy? He was using some awful language, and Joe Welch, the lawyer, looked at him and said, "Don't you have any decency, period?" You know? I don't ever want to use that. You know, you stop and think for a quick minute. Your time on this earth is very short. You know, it really is. When you look at, you know, when I start talking about the universe, and somebody tells me it's 4 billion years old. 4 billion! Do you realize what's happened in 4 billion years? Sure, I'm 89, but 89, that's like a teardrop. You know, and yet in our world, that is old, basically. But then look at it this way, it is not old. In the span of time, it's not old. So take advantage of every day. As I often say, it's the first day of the rest of your life.
Mind you, our meters run out in 25 minutes. Also on the subject of time, consider the following, because I'm sure you've heard the phrase, timing is everything. And what a gift we were given, because the radio era really began it's often marked as the Harding-Cox election returns in the early 1920s. So radio itself is not yet 100 years old. And of course, television and all of that's been added on since. But radio is not yet 100 years old. Jim just gave his age. So here's a man who was born into the blossoming radio era, had an extraordinary talent for it, and found the right place to be with it. If you had been born 10 years earlier, you might have been making wagon wheels. And 10 years later, who knows what. But the ideal timing of your life and this medium that we all share was so perfect for us in terms of your natural ability to describe a scene, to interview people. We have really been gifted by the fact that you and radio came along in that order, in that time frame. What I want to have Russ talk about, because he's sort of the outsider who came in, is to how he came in to be a part of radio and what the experience has been like for you, Russ, to become a part of this in your adulthood instead of your youth, as Jim and I did.
How did it all happen? Being interested and involved in sports, and the interest and the remarkable gift that we've had in this community is WJTN. Started, has been, and will always be a local radio station. The radio sports team was always interested in what the 9-year-old ball player was doing at Lincoln Field, what the major league prospect was doing at the stadium, and they put it on the air. So they would call and they would open the door and they would open the airwaves to the youngsters, myself and others, playing ball on the various ball fields. And we were able to share that. So that made me an immediate interest in the world of radio. And then to go on, and as the life days begin to add, to meet those personalities, to hear of Doc Webster, and then, oh, Dennis Webster, who's Dennis? That's his son. Oh boy, what a revelation that was. And to hear of Jim Roselle, and I remember Jim Roselle from a distance participating at the Boys Club, and to realize that Jim Roselle, that's really Jim Roselle? No wonder I would like to be Jim Roselle. And have the opportunity to go in and sit in that station, and not feeling like an outsider, not feeling like a non-participant, and not being more nervous when they put the mic in front of me, but to be able to be part of that has been overwhelming and a great opportunity. I feel very humble about that, and I feel very, very bad for some of the other people that haven't had the opportunity to go to that radio station and sit down with the microphone. Jim said he never met a microphone he didn't like. I never met a microphone I wasn't afraid of. Jim tells a story, he was emceeing a banquet and he gave the microphone to somebody, and 45 minutes later, he still hadn't got the microphone back again. So microphone time is very important. But to be part of that medium, to be part of that in this community, and to be part of the fabric of this community has just been overwhelming. I would have never thought that when I was that little one that smiled at mother and sat on my dad's shoulders, that someday I would be sitting in a chair at WJTN with these gentlemen and with you as a listening audience. And when I never felt that I would walk out onto a baseball field. I never thought that I would graduate from high school. I never thought when I walked by or drove by and saw the building down there on Chandler Street called MRC, that someday I would have my hand in there creating ball bearings and to be part of that. I never thought that from playing baseball on those ball fields, but thanks to the media, the community knew that I was doing that. And that's how Jim Sharp, who was then recreation director, took me by the hand. And one day I'd be able to sit in a chair, not fill his shoes, but sitting in a chair that Jim Sharp sat in. And that's because I could go into a station and be in the company of and participating on the same airwaves at the very same moment as Dennis Webster and Jim Roselle happened to me. And that's been a very humble and a very grateful experience. I don't know whether I got 2 days or 2,005 days left, but I will not have enough days to fill the gift of which they and others have given to me. Dennis, thank you.
I'm going to give this mic back to Jimmy. Has more to say, but I just want to comment to the audience here and to Greg, who's recording this, about interviewing. Because when you look at the very distinct backgrounds that Jim and Russ bring to the table, to the microphone, when they sit down after 10 a.m. on Saturday morning and do the times of your life, and interviewing, we all ask questions of each other, but to interview is a real skill and something that is a cultivated art, really. To sit down with someone and be able to take an appropriate demeanor with them so that you can get them to talk about their lives and to answer deep, profound, sometimes nosy questions and make them feel comfortable doing so, and how those questions are shaped and what order they come in and the way you ask them. To have two people of such diverse and wonderful backgrounds sit down with a guest on Saturday morning really offers an extraordinary opportunity to learn to know about, get to know that person, and to have these people, and both Jim and Russ, from their own perspectives, inquire into their lives and their purpose and their passions and their goals and their frustrations. Pity the one person, if it ever should happen, because there's another great interviewer in the room, the one behind the camera here, Greg Peterson. If Greg, Jim, and Russ ever got the same guest at the same time, I don't know if the person would ever live through it all. Because you are in the midst of the three best interviewers in terms of getting people to recall their stories and getting them recorded of anyone in the modern history of this community, with Jim, Russ, and Greg in the same place.
Let me certainly, as I talk about people that influence this community and the volunteer spirit of it, look at this man here, Greg Peterson. Look at what he's done. Look at what he's done to preserve the history of this area for generations to come. Look what he did to institute the Robert Jackson Center. For us to brag about, boast about. We're now a destination place. Jamestown is a destination in the travel industry. We have the Lucy Desi Museum. We have the Robert Jackson Center. We have the Roger Torrey Peterson Center. And we're going to get the National Comedy Center. You can venture and bet that buses will be rolling into town wanting to see all of those. It'll be suggested on travel routes. But this man put an organization together and has brought to our town 2 chief justices. I challenge any community to match that accomplishment. We have had the pleasure of 2 chief justices, plus the law clerks that served Robert Jackson, and those that worked with him in the Supreme Court. I never believed that I would have an opportunity to chat with a Supreme Court justice, because over the years that I've been there, anytime a Supreme Court justice has come to Chautauqua, never were they available for a radio interview. But 2 years ago, it happened. And I wasn't even aware that it was going to happen. I was doing an interview with Jim, Bill Klinger, I think, wasn't it? And all of a sudden, my assistant, Mac Warren, pointed at a table, and he went with his hand and said, and I looked over there, and there's Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And she was waiting her turn to be interviewed. This little Sicilian boy from Franklin Street, having that opportunity, amazing, amazing. And at the table, someone asked me, who are some of your interviews that you enjoyed? Well, I don't try to single out any one of them. They're all very important. But if you want to look at one in which there were a lot of laughs and unexpected happenings, it was the interview with Dr. Ruth. Yeah, Dr. Ruth. And do you know, she's written a new book. Yeah, she's now 87 years old. And she's still telling you, it's not too late. No, really. She's got a new book and it's called The Doctor Is In. Greg, you'd love it. You'd love it. Right. And I'm trying, believe it or not. I'm sure she promised me in my book. Oh, by the way, I should have brought a book along just to have you look. No, in my book is an interview with Dr. Ruth. And in there, I told her, I hope you come back to Chautauqua some year. And she answered me by saying, I want to come back and I want to be on your show again. So I'm going to either call her or write her and tell her if I can have a phone interview with her. If she's not coming to Chautauqua, the good old phone interview, right, Ned? And we can talk about her new book, The Doctor Is In. Anyway, that's the opportunity and the luxury of what we have here. And I'll wind it up. Thank you so much from my heart for all you've done for me. Thank you.
We have 10 minutes before our meters run out. And there are many people here who are joining us in the audience today. If you have any questions that you'd just like to relay up front here to Jim, Russ, and me, we'd be happy to answer them for you. Yes, go ahead.
Tell us about your times of your lives and how you interact during that show, how the charisma spreads between the three of you.
Well, I can bow out of that one because the times of your life really occurs without me, except I am promoted on Tuesdays, but this is really Jim and Russ's presentation on Saturday morning, so I'll let Russ address that first.
That's only practice for Tuesday morning. Before we do that, I want to give Jim Roselle his first microphone. Sat on the porch on Franklin and broadcast Notre Dame football using a spoon or a stick. Times of your life, on page. Local man at the time was in the media business, newspaper, area newspapers, and had an interest in the community. Talked to Jim and said, I have an idea for a program. Maybe we could do something on the airwaves. And the conversation settled around the idea of all of the wonderful people in this community that we could sit down, that Jim goes down with and talk about their lives and about all of their various experiences. And they said, but Jim said, well, I'll need some help. He says, because I got to keep my cup of happiness full. Who can only get the help keep my coffee cup full? And the guy said, well, there's a Diethrick kid running around, not doing anything right now. So let's see, put the two together. And that become the times of their life, and it's been going on ever since. And as Jim says many times, everybody in this room and outside of this room have a story and have a story to tell. And Jim has had the mechanisms, starting with the spoon on Franklin Street, to pull that story out of people and to share it. And I think that was basically, and that's been how many years now, Jim?
How many years for the times of your life?
I'd say about 20. And there's another another story. It was a gentleman, a listener, that suggested that Russ and I get together. It was not management at WJTN. It was a listener who said, why don't you and Russ get together? You people are so involved in the community, you could have some wonderful time with guests. And we did. We went into it really what you would call naked, in a sense. And the first subject we chose was interviewing musicians that have been part of this community in their lives. Dorothy Brooks, she played at the Phoenix Grill for over 30 years. Max Davis played 27 years, almost every night at the Hotel Jamestown. And other musicians, Stu Snyder and the band. And we had such a quick reaction to that. We had people calling. I remember a couple of ladies with tears in their voices because it brought back the memories of them going to hear Max Davis. And they courted. It's a Baghdad Lounge. And they married. Every anniversary they would spend with Max. We had those kind of stories. And from that day on, here we are, 20 years later. How about that? Sports fans?
Another question from the audience. I think we have time for one more comment from anybody who is here.
Well, I can't help myself. Russ, can you explain to the crowd what happened in 1934 when you were born? What was happening in and around your world?
October 9th, 1934, Patton, Pennsylvania, in the middle of the state of Pennsylvania. Father was a coal miner, and my mother was at home. And that was 1934. October 9th was the last day of the 1934 World Series. And while my father was in the coal mines and the baseball games were going on, and my mother was waiting to see who was knocking at the door, and for me to smile at that beautiful face, I was born on that World Series day. My mother was keeping box scores of the World Series, so when my father got home from the coal mines, he would have the box score of the World Series ball game. So I had to be a baseball fan, coming out and all of that, and having listened to that, and telling, oh no, mommy, 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 that was an error, it was a base hit. I was telling her that from in the depths of her soul. And to have been part of that made me a baseball fan. It made me a Tiger fan, it made me a Cardinal fan. And somehow the Yankee got involved someplace along the line, but it made me a baseball fan. And the foundation that I was able to stand upon the shoulders of thousands and thousands of other people, they were standing on the foundation of baseball. And that's where my life took me to Lincoln Field, took me to the stadium, took me into high school baseball, took me into the recreation department, took me into being involved with Greg and others on professional baseball in our community. I always have had that with me. If it hadn't been for October 9th, 1934, at the World Series, I wouldn't be going to Babe Ruth World Series today and being part of that activity. So if that's the path you had in mind, Greg, that's how it all happened.
I think we'll have to let you all go now and bring this to a conclusion. It has been a joy for all three of us to be here. I don't know if you heard the phone ring in the background, but a message has come forward from the office here at the Marvin House that Dr. Ruth wants you to call her. As soon as you're done here today. Thank you all very much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Dennis.